just saying, you were such a prominent cultural force that right a couple of years after this movie came out, Vanity Fair arrived in my mailbox, and on the cover it's like inside peek at Nixon, and it was all like guys in suits. You joked about that. It's like,
Yeah, that was a very difficult movie to make and to sell.
yeah.
Because it was all white men in suits with bad haircuts, you know. That was the truth. That was Nixon's second term.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was very, I like that movie a lot, and I think it holds up for me. It's 3 hours and about 15, I think.
Yeah.
So it's long for an audience, and a lot of talk, but those who appreciate what's going on beneath the surface, I think would love that film. More intelligentsia have written me saying that is their favorite. It's surprising. Diplomats from all over the world, people who know what's going on in government, they think it's pretty shocking.
So as you were coming back in, I was saying, you know, I cannot even believe this was released by a major studio, this movie.
That was a battle too. I remember the first time we showed this to the Warner Brothers executives. Essentially, it was a small screening room, and Bob Daly, Terry Semel, and various others, plus me and a few people, and my agent. They were livid. They walked out. They said, "We'll talk about it later." And they went out with my agent was. One of my agents was Mike Ovitz, who was pretty powerful, and Mike went out. He came back. And Mike was white. He just said, "I'll fix this." They're pretty pissed off, at least. But you know, they said basically that you have a contract to deliver an R film. You cannot deliver an what was it? And at that time, it was
NC-17, yeah.
It was you cannot deliver an NC-17. That was their comment. You better deliver, otherwise it's going to be a disaster. But this is a hard film to get released, and I literally had to go back to the Motion Picture Association several times. You know, I've been through that battle with De Palma. I hadn't been personally, but he'd done Scarface, so we went through that. And he got so fed up with the process, he just gave up. And he said, I'm not going to do any more. And they gave it an R, finally.
Yeah.
So now this is happening to me years later. And I couldn't understand what they were objecting to, but I kept cutting. It was basically the chaos. And that comes through still, that I was worried about. I lost a lot of great graphic shots, which you've seen, I think, in the director's cut, which is things like, as you mentioned, Tommy Lee Jones's head on the pike. And when Mallory shoots Downey's hand, I made a big hole in the hand so that she saw it. It was very funny. Stuff like that they just didn't understand and didn't care for. But it became redundant. I mean, I couldn't cut anything. I couldn't understand what can I do? The whole thing is a fucking chaos. And that was really the truth. And they ran up against that wall finally and said, shrugged and said, okay. And it becomes a war of attrition. But so that this cut got out and did surprisingly well, because it was August and they dumped it in the end of August, last week of August, which is in those days was dog days, and August was a dead month. We revitalized that date. It became, now since that movie in 1993, they have released dozens of movies in the last week of August, and they worked. So you understand, it was a change. It was a revolution.
What prompted you to want to do this movie? Like, the one you've made before this was Heaven and Earth.
Yeah.
Which was much. I mean, I wouldn't call it a gentle movie exactly, but it's not like this. You know.
Well, Heaven and Earth is its own story because it's based on her book and a lot of anger in it. Yeah. But it was a story of healing and a Buddhist story of reconciliation, and I loved that film. I made this movie out of disgust, I suppose, discussed with the media landscape.
Yes.
Really, that was a time when, if you remember correctly, O.J. Simpson was a culmination of a period when TV and news became more and more sensational, more and more tabloid, and it's stayed that way, basically. It just seemed to me, after growing up in television and being as sick as you can get, because American television can coarsen your mentality. You know, there's a lot of violence anyway, pre this movie, but so I threw it back at them, and they had no sense of humor about it. Young people went,
Yeah.
but it was it was just discussed about the whole way the world was turning, and I think the 90s was the beginning of this. I don't know, some of you are very young, so you don't remember this, but America has not become what I wanted it to become. And after 2000, we went to the shit house, you know. This is the shit house. Leonard Cohen, murder. It's more than murder. It's a murder that's spiritual. It's a murder that's destroyed. It's a love of war, a love of violence. It's in our country. It's deep.
Did you have anybody at Warner Brothers or anybody at the ratings board who explained to you exactly what the objection was? Was it tone?
No,
Was it tone? You think?
No, I would go back and I'd say, and then they say, well, this shot, that shot, and I try to make it as specific as possible. So, and it was Hefner at that time. He was a smart man. He wasn't stupid, but listen, this film helped like a lot of other filmmakers, because after this it became lights out.
Right.
I mean, it seems tamer now, perhaps, than
This?
well. I mean, you have to admit that they broke all the rules after this.
Well, maybe, but you know, here's what's interesting to me, among other things about this movie, is all of your other films, they certainly don't shy away from the darker aspects of the human experience. They confront them directly, but you always have some kind of a moral framework or a moral compass. You have Jim Garrison in JFK. You have Chris Taylor being, with his soul being struggled over in Platoon. And you have, Charlie Sheen in Wall Street is literally torn between a good dad and a bad dad. And here, you really, like Mickey and Mallory have an emotional anchor, which is their love for each other, but there's no moral anchor point in this. We're kind of adrift, and we have to make up our own minds about why we feel what we feel, why we think what we think, and no wonder people had issues with this.
Well, I don't agree with you on this, Matt, as you know. I do find that Mickey says it well. He says, from where I am, you're another species, Wade. You have to understand that they do have a morality. They do between themselves. And, but they're a product of our civilization, bottom line.
The young critic Michael Guarnieri, who had a piece in the book that I wrote about your work and your life, he said that he felt like this was another Vietnam film in a way. What do you think about that?
Well, how many Vietnams have we had, I mean, aren't we in the middle of another one? This comes back. It was a war that should have been dealt with, atoned for, remembered. And as you know, I made 3 Vietnam movies. Tried to make Me Lai too. That's the 4th one. That was nixed. I couldn't get that off the ground. So I mean, it's Vietnam Redux. Yes, I mean, this is a war. What's going on now, the way I see it, is a disastrous war. I mean, Mr. Biden or whatever, this administration has sought has sought this kind of conflict, and it's just gotten worse and worse. And I don't want to get into specifics because people are going to fight and disagree, but I think it's a very dangerous time for us. We provoked not only Russia, but we provoked Israel, the Arabic